We are also delighted today to have been joined by Michael Schaffer, who is the Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Economic Development for Augusta University and Health System. In this key role, Mr. Schaffer oversees clinical outreach and economic development activities throughout the state, community and military relations, and Augusta University's health global partnerships. He's been a focal point for the university's role in the development of the Cyber Center, from which we're bringing you this program today. Please join me in welcoming Michael Schaffer.
So thank you very much. And thank you very much for choosing the Colby Knight building at the Georgia Cyber Center. So I think my task today, after welcoming you, is to tell a little bit about how this facility came about, kind of what was the vision, where was the start point of this. So I always go back to say, number one, Dr. Keel, the president of Augusta University, had a vision for a digital campus. He said no, and he came here 3 years ago from Georgia Southern. But so when you think about that, there was something even bigger going on in Augusta at the time. It had announced a few years before that Army Cyber was going to move to Georgia. Okay? That was something that our federal delegation had brought to us. I guess the date, if you asked Senator Chambliss, it was back in September of 2013. Well, because of that, if you live in this area, you kept hearing from the leadership at Fort Gordon, you would hear them say, you're not ready, you're not prepared for what's coming to Georgia. And we asked the question, what do you mean when I raised it? Well, we need a trained workforce. It was always, we need a trained workforce. And so over and over, you would hear that from those speaking from our home podium. So, approaching Governor Deal, we talked about, if you think about, the federal government was committing over $2 billion in infrastructure out at Fort Gordon. That's a $2 billion investment in the state of Georgia. You think about the Governor Deal, he talks about Georgia being the number one state to do business in, right? Well, when we attracted Kia to Georgia, what did we do? We attracted Kia by way of incentives, tax incentives, job credit incentives. But we also built them a training facility to train their workers that were going to use the robotics in that plant. Fast forward, and you think we attracted Baxter Corporation off of I-20, right? That happened during Governor Deal's first term. Again, tax credits, job credits, training center, health science. Well, if you look at the tagline for this facility is the Training and Innovation Center. With Fort Gordon, with DoD investing $2 billion in Georgia, the governor said, we're going to invest. They said they need training. We'll build a training center. So that tells you kind of how we got here, what we got. It started with one building, and we realized that's not going to be able to take care of the collaborations we needed. So ultimately, it's $100 million. And as just mentioned, that was one of the largest single investments in a cyber facility like this by the state government. But it wasn't just $100 million, it was $100 million in cash. And about 25 years of working in government at the federal level or state level, I've never seen government building cash. There's a reason. One was to deliver the facility on time. So think about that. From the day of the groundbreaking to the day we opened the doors, 386 days. Just over a year. Incredible effort by a lot of people to make that happen. So the second thing we kept hearing is listen to the leadership at Fort Gordon. What did they say? They said, well, number one, in order for us to solve our problems, it's going to take government, it's going to take academia, and it's going to take industry. It's going to take those three partners to provide those innovation solutions to some of our problems. That takes care of the training and innovation as a tagline for what we do here. So within these buildings, the total of the campus is over 330,000 square feet of space. It's a very special space. Within the space, and you'll hear a little bit later from Captain Assey, is Georgia Cyber Range. I'm going to just keep going past that. I'm going to still discuss that for you, but that is a very key amenity in one of these buildings and what makes it so special. The other parts of this building are the innovation space where we'll be able to come together. And for the first time in the state of Georgia, we have the University System of Georgia and the Technical College System of Georgia both offering courses in one building. And what's even goes further than that is for us to be able to offer educational training anywhere from a certificate level all the way to a master's degree. And what's even more special about that is we've talked about in the state of Georgia for years is how do we get the technical college system and the university system of Georgia to work together. So last week was the first time that we can find in the history of the state where those two institutions did a common student orientation. The goal is when you walk through this building, whether you're a traditional student or a returning student, that when you take courses here, you can build towards any degree that's offered. Or maybe it's not even the degree that you're after, it's additional training from a certificate. But if you're a traditional student starting your career in the cybersecurity or the IT world, many times we find where if you start in one system, those credit hours they won't go to the university system or they won't go back to the technical college system. We've asked both organizations to map those courses so that as a student, A, you don't lose the time and effort of those credits, but you don't lose the money that you spend on those credits. That'll be the first time we've done that. The importance of that is, we are fairly focused here. It's not important across the entire spectrum of what one school might offer. So, having our folks in Fort Gordon to be in the building is also another plus, to be able to on a daily basis. One of the things we encourage here is collaboration. I know when I read, I was like, okay, I'm speaking with them today, and I read your website, and twice I guess the opening statement was the word collaboration. You will hear that over and over and over in this building. We are done everything we can to encourage it and try to create that ecosystem. So when we program the building, the first thing all the tenants ask for, human nature is, what do you need? Well, I need a kitchenette. I need a place to get me coffee. I need a place to go eat lunch, right? And I need a copier. We said no to that. We forced everybody to the middle of the building. So if you're here, that's all provided in the middle of what we call social spaces. The idea is to force those opportunities for people to run across each other, to collide together, to collaborate. I think for one of the first times you'll see, if you look at it, even on the very top of this building is a veranda that the state government built a space that you can go overlook the Savannah River. That wasn't put there just because it's a pretty spot. It was to encourage people to stay here at lunch or find a time with a cup of coffee, whether you're a student, whether you're someone from industry, or you're a faculty member. So I guess the special part about the building, there's a lot of technology here, but the true special part is what we have ahead, which is providing this collaboration between industry, government, and academia. Thanks. Thanks a lot for the time today.
Thank you, Marco. It is truly a partnership. The innovation in how we partner is part of the innovation that we have here, which is just tremendously exciting. I'd like to bring in yet another voice from this partnership. All of us at the Untitled Chapter were really very pleased that we could be joined here today by Captain Christopher Absey, who is the Deputy Director of the U.S. Army Cyber Technical College and the Army Cyber School. Captain Absey has been advising the Augusta University and the Georgia Cyber Center on the design and implementation of this cyber range, and he's here to tell us more about it. Captain Absey.
Awesome, thanks very much. So, slide deck. So, a little bit decided several years ago that hey, we need a dedicated workforce to do these hard technical cybersecurity issues for us, right? We have the military intelligence community that does intelligence gathering. We have the civilian community, which does the kind of day-to-day IAOP operations type stuff, but there's a gap between those two capabilities. So that's where cybersecurity kind of came to be. So what is cyber in the context of the Army? So the Army, as you mentioned, being a part of the Department of Defense, right? By National Force, right? So with that in mind, our ability to influence combat is kind of our core function, right? So we need to go back to operation with that local our commanders. So that means, not only just, hey, can we turn off the lights at a certain time, or can we, disrupt communications? It means, hey, how can we actually affect combat systems on that field in a negative manner for the enemy, or not very negative, or in a positive manner for us, right? So, for all the great things the Army does, design's not one of them, so I apologize for this terrible voice getting these slides, so I will move past that. So like I mentioned, I'm working cybersecurity education director at Cyber School. This is our mission. Just read that real quick. Key things in here is that we focus on current and future needs. So it's not just about immediate feedback, can happen to speak capability. So, hey, 5 years from now, what is the force need to be successful in everything we environment? That's our core function. Okay, what is what it's talking about? So, key thing, manipulate technology other than intended ways to facilitate kinetic effects and prevent escape, right? So cyber isn't something we do just for the sake of itself, right? It's not really back when we do it in conjunction all the other capabilities the Army and the other forces have. So we work with armor, infantry, artillery to kind of collaborate our effects and have it kind of desire to escape with your own commander, right? That's a key concept. So knowing all that stuff, how do we train on really, as Secretary Russell said, an unknown unknown, right? We don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. We have to how do we train soldiers to kind of counter that eventuality? Is the answer to them don't, right? It's not something that we can do. So instead, focus on fostering a creative and a hacker mindset in our soldiers where they can easily adapt to any situation that they encounter, right? It's not about teaching them how to use a tool or how to, follow this process, hack this stuff. It's not about that. It's about teaching them to be kind of self-motivated, driven, creative people. It's solve any type of problem that they encounter. That's kind of our key concern. So a couple different ways to do that. So the first way is courseware as code. So we apply buzzwords coming, agile, and also methodologies to how we create and deliver our content, right? And so we use GitLab, which is an implementation of the Git software version control system to maintain all of our courseware, right? So there's no PowerPoint slides, no Word documents, no PDFs. It's all stored in your machine readable content. So I presume many of you are in the kind of IT industry, you have software developers and so on and so forth. We all use the same system to kind of write software, use it to write our course content. Right, what that lets us do is lets us apply these methodologies to how we train soldiers. Like I mentioned before, stuff changes so rapidly that our traditional, theory and process reading content doesn't work. So we can do it this way, we can, as you all know, leverage the ability to make rapid changes, or review them, improve them, and integrate them very, very quickly. By doing that, we kind of shorten the flash to bang of a department to our ability to train students on a certain thing. So, as an example, here we have operational force material approved by TradeOp. We integrate with the operational force. So if you are at an operational unit in the operational force, you can reach out to the school and say, hey, we saw this thing that happens. We think you guys should train this particular topic. Say, okay, no problem. What do you think it should look like? We put in a request. We review it, make sure that it meets our requirements as a schoolhouse, and say, yeah, this is good to go, approve it. It becomes part of the course pretty much instantly. So that's it. And you have been in the Army before, any part of the DoD, that is a transformational change in how we consume content, how we do things, right? Normally it's a 3-year process where people have to physically get together, decide, okay, we need to train ABC 1 to 3 in this way, and then maybe a year later, that results in that approved, but then a year after that, it makes it to school labs, and a year after that, it makes it to the course. By the time that happens, it's already outdated and it's useless. So by doing it this way, we can meet our requirements much more quickly. And the great thing about this is it integrates directly into our cyber, which is the other key component, which we'll talk about now. So, in 2015, the Army created, or the Cyber Schools was started in 2014, but in 2015, we started having student looks at, okay, well, we have students now, how are we going to train them? What are we going to train them on? And so we looked at kind of the traditional Army system systems that we used to train people on technical things. And that worked, right? They were okay, but they weren't quite what we needed. They were a little too slow. There's so much process and bureaucracy kind of wrapped around it, right? So to get something created, you have to then, put in a change request, make sure, wait for the team to make your scenario whatever you wanted, then that goes wrong, obviously, so then you go back and rechange it again, just on and on and on and on, right? So nothing, stuff that I'm sure you all familiar with, right? So that was too much bureaucracy for us to deal with, right? You need to rapidly change the courseware, and so we needed a system that rapidly changed as well. And so we said, okay, so traditional smart stuff isn't gonna work, we gotta kind of go a different path. And so we looked across the industry and said, okay, how are people kind of tackling this problem? And so the advent of kind of the cloud, and I don't mean like the cloud as in, public cloud, I mean really the concept of having user self-service, rapidly deployable, elastic resources kind of going into so everything great, that kind of fits our mold. What can we do with that? The problem is, like I mentioned before, we're not just focused on the traditional computers, right? So your PC was an x86 processor, most likely. Your phone is probably an ARM processor. Embedded network routers are mixed architecture usually. There's architectures out there that kind of represent different things, like your mainframes are probably C or IBM, things like that. Cloud providers, VMware, AWS, Azure, don't focus on those other markets. It's not there's no money in it, right? Which makes sense. That's not where you're getting money. I did focus on x86. The problem is we need to focus on all those other things. That's kind of the holistic cyber picture, right? We can't just focus on one thing. So knowing that, we said, okay, great, now we have to come up with this thing on our own. So we kind of set off and said, okay, let's design this thing. So the Army decided to set off and design this thing from scratch, all the hardware, wrote all the code, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, the Army said, hey, why should we spend all this money, taxpayer dollars, on this thing and not share it freely with those around us? And so the Army said, okay, great, we're going to open source this project we made. So Air calls it the DTA, the Georgia Cyber calls it the Georgia Cyber Range, but it's really a part of the same thing. So it's an open framework that the Army wrote, which kind of made open source, allows people to define, again, in code, what scenarios and what hardware you have, and really in an elastic way, allow people to dynamically train. And so if I look at the picture, so the little people are kind of soldier stationed all over the world. They can actually reach back from wherever they're at, be it on the beach in, Florida, or like deployed in Iraq, or on a boarding class, all back to the same resource infrastructure, the same kind of user experience, no matter where they're at. And so by doing this, we allow them to be that lifelong learner that we talked about before, that can constantly look for new things to learn, and pick up on new techniques. Because along with this, they get access to all of our updated courseware. Right? So it's not just you go like in the old Army way, you go to school maybe 3 times in your career, once to for BOLA, for initial officer training, in your career course, and then the IAOP as a major, and then CBSC later on, and some other stuff. But basically, it's a very static kind of set of things and gates that you go through. That wasn't going to work for us. We allow students to, at any point in their career, reach back to the latest and greatest in school this is, and then have access to these resources, right? So when you're a 17th series soldier, you get unlimited for your career access to all this stuff, which again is a transformational thing that isn't usually done inside the Army specifically. So, with all that said, when Mr. Shepard came to talk to the cyber school about, when this building was kind of first conceived and kind of talk about what the bill was, at the actually cyber reach. Do you guys know anything about that? We might know some things about that, right? So we talked and we said, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to leverage this open source framework we made to help the Georgia Cyber Center meet really our own mission, right? So we're not totally selfless, right? So we know that the product that the GCC makes is going to be consumed by the Army to make the force better, right? So if we can influence in a positive way what the GCC can do with its own journey, that ends up helping us at the end of the day, right? So we partnered with IAOP and MOA Summit for boarding and the university and said, hey, we'll help you make this cyber range. And so since then, we've been advising them on what the hardware to buy, what the way to go about this is. So there's some differences between what we do and what they do, but not enough to justify a new framework. So they worked basically what the Army did, made some adjustments to it, and kind of customize it to just enough where they can kind of meet their own needs. So as business people, you have different needs than the Army does.
So,
thank you, Captain. Before we bring up our next speaker, I would like to just advise those of you who are participating in the program through the live stream that there is an opportunity for you to ask a question. So if you'd like to type, if you have a question, and you can type it into the dialog box that appears at the bottom of your screen. It will pop up on a laptop I'm monitoring here in the room, and I will relay it to a member of the panel. At this point, I'd like to add a private sector perspective to the base of this conversation, which is all about collaboration and innovation from a variety of partners. Prominent among the many firms in the private sector who support their clients' data security requirements is IBM, which is widely recognized as a leading innovator in this space. IBM evolved its cybersecurity practice from the unique pioneering perspective it developed in the earliest days of the information technology industry. Today, in the global era of cloud and cognitive computing, IBM's clients face security challenges from enemies and tools that were undreamed of then. And maintaining their security requires the kind of ceaseless innovation for which IBM has earned its leadership position. We are delighted to have on our panel today IBM's Cybersecurity Technical Manager for the public sector of the North American Security Team, Jared Levy. Jared.
Thank you, good afternoon. So, one of the keys for us to understand and kind of continue to innovate is getting down to why, right? So what's motivating cyber criminals? You know, why are they in the business? How are they making money and what are they doing? So according to the Treasury Department, cybercrime is now past drug trafficking as the largest source of money for criminals, which, from my perspective, growing up, it was everything from Goodfellas, where they were moving from bootlegging to drugs. You know, we see all these people kind of shifting gears. Well, we've seen it shift gears again, right? So there's a lot of money to be had just from that perspective. So why? Industrial espionage, right? You've got other people trying to figure out what's new in the business, what do we not know, how do we steal people, how do we steal intelligence, how do we steal information. Political, obviously, I think we've been hearing a lot about that in the recent years, as far as in the country, outside of the country, how do we get ahead of our enemies? Again, military. Thank you very much. I look forward to potentially seeing some curator content in the catalog. And then it goes the other way, right? The activism and hacktivism, right? So it's not always from a bad place necessarily. Sometimes people are trying to do good. It's just they're not doing it in a legal perspective, right? So it doesn't matter what the gain is, what the reason is, but part of that helps us determine the vector, right, and how we handle it, right? So, talking about the criminality of it, if you, other than here where it says code and exploit reuse, if you look at this is a business model for any normal company, right? So it's amazing how this has stopped being such a, hey, Matthew Broderick breaking into into NORAD and just for fun. And it's turned into this big thing. I apologize. I'm a movie buff, so I'll probably accidentally reference a lot of them today while we're talking. But this is a real thing. People understand this, right? And like I said, it's so easy to make money here. It's not even here. Lower barrier. That's a cost barrier too, right? It's so easy to get 4 guys in a room someplace. You know, get them a high-speed line, get them some code that they can reuse, and they're just churning it out, right? And the cost of hardware is so much cheaper than it's ever been before. It's so easy to just build up this infrastructure So what does that mean, right? That means there's all this data that we have now that we never had before. So 30 billion connected IoT endpoints by 2020. So it's not even just computers anymore. It's things that we're carrying around in our pockets. It's things like light bulbs. Somebody mentioned, I think Captain had mentioned devices also, right? So we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it in buildings. We're seeing it in healthcare. We're seeing it, you name it. But that's another device that can be susceptible, right? And with those 30 billion additional IoT devices on top of everything else, 160 zettabytes by 2025 of data. So what does more data mean? More potential, more risk. And that this IoT is going to add $129 trillion to the global economy. That's just crazy. Did I lose you? No, there we go. But it's just crazy when we start talking about those numbers and how large that is. And you know what? It's only going to keep going up as we become more enabled and our children become more enabled. My wife caught on that my daughter from the back of our car was saying, "Hey Google, blah, blah, blah," my 3-year-old. So, I promise she knows how to use technology better than my parents do, right? So we're going to see more and more and more. So going on to this study, let's talk about what a breach actually means to a company, right? So globally, the average cost of a data breach is $3.86 million. The average cost per record, $150. 196 days to identify a breach, and the average time to contain it, 70.
Wow.
If you think about how crazy that is, and that's worldwide. We're got a little bit different when we start looking at the US. But there's just bad guys bouncing around in our environments, and we got to get ahead of it. If you look at the factors here, getting an IR team, having your incident response in control, right? Knowing what to do, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Obviously encryption. If they can't get to it, if they can't decrypt it, the data's not worth anything. And then having backups, using them, making sure systems have redundancy. That's a big thing, is cost reduction. Obviously, what's going to increase that? We need more people. We got to bring someone in to help us, right? We realize that our old systems are no longer valid. Let's figure out how to get them into the cloud. That obviously costs money. And of course, paying fines. And we see 7.91 in the US, $233 per record. A little bit longer to identify a breach, but a little bit shorter to contain it. But still, just amazing when you think about the potential there, right? And obviously, if it starts impacting things like transactions, if I remember correctly, when I first started working at IBM, I was working with a firm that was in the trading business, and they had some systems down for whatever reason, and we started talking about what the financial impact was. And the numbers that they started talking about, it just blew my mind that that's how quickly things come together. Then we start looking about how, from a business perspective, what the impact that is on a business being successful. It can be a detriment for sure. But we're making progress, right? So it used to be everybody had access to everything. Now we're actually sensitive to that. We're focused on least privilege access versus wide open. We're actually more cognizant of encryption. Everybody knows that you're not supposed to have a weak password anymore. I think a lot of us still have them on Post-it notes under our desk, but at least that's social and we can contain that a little bit better. Security was more of a technical focus. There was the guys in the room and they were security. Now everyone's talking about security up at the boardroom. Now this last one, I think is a little bit slower. Compliance-driven versus intelligence-driven. And I'll add intelligence and risk-driven, right? I think right now at the boardroom, we understand security is important. I think a lot of it is, we need to figure out how to get that from yes, we're checking the boxes to actually understanding the risk and It's just checking the box, and that doesn't mean anything, right? We're not understanding why, we're just solving the symptoms. So how do we do better? It was funny because I was flying over. I was thinking about force multiplier. What's that? And I saw who we're going to be presenting with the Army today, and I just was thinking of the commercial the Army won, right? And obviously the slogan, everybody knows that. But how does that work? And it's these force multipliers, right? It's exactly everything the captain mentioned. How do we give tools to people to succeed when, how can I make a difference, right? So getting smarter. We need to take all that data and find a better way to process it, right? I obviously can't do that myself. I've got to find the tools to do it. So we can get me the 10 pieces of data that I need to make an intelligent decision. Respond faster. I have the tools to automate things, right? We need to make our tools do the 80% of the garbage work, It's protecting our organization, but it's, low value, but it has to be done. Working together, collaborating like the captain mentioned. Thank you very much for going in front of me and light everything up. But not only that, but with our vendors, right? With our governments talking about regulations and things, opening up the industry, making sure we're standardizing. Because when we do that, then everyone's going to be on the same page, everyone's going to be talking the same technical language, and it's easier for our tools to do the other two. So of course, talking about being smarter, augmented intelligence. So let me clarify this, because I think people use these three terms interchangeably, and while they're very similar, they're not. So machine learning is the very basic, right? It's taking the rules we have, understanding the algorithms, and then applying it to data, right? And figuring out what comes from that, but pretty much that's it. Artificial intelligence, this is what we think about when we're talking about, the robot pulling in data, being able to respond intelligently and go from that perspective. Now, cognitive computing, this is what the big deal is. It's not only understanding the data, but understanding the human factors that go along with it, right? So it's intelligently taking the data, adding that brain power to it, and then being able to use it from a future perspective more intelligently. So this brings me up to our Watson, right? And I'm sure everyone's heard about Watson. We've seen commercials and financial and medical and other things, right? But of course, we're here talking about cybersecurity. So what does Watson do? So it's about a year and a half ago now, maybe a little bit longer than that. What we started doing was we started teaching it, because that's what we had to do, right? We had to give some kind of understanding to the corpus, right? The data, right? Because while a virus in a computer perspective and a virus in a person perspective, they're sort of similar if you think about what it really is, but from the context of I need someone to process my data so I can make effective decisions in business, not so much. So teaching the system the context of security, of cyber, of technology, so it can take data from the rest of the world, data feeds, security feeds, media, everything that it sucks in. And here we see our X-Force Exchange, our partner feeds, open source feeds, so the structured data. Then unstructured data. The thing that's crazy about data when you actually break down all those records is there's only really a small part of the data that is easy to understand from a computer perspective. Right? There's all this unstructured data. I've seen this diagram a lot where it's like an iceberg. There's all that data that's underneath the water that we don't see, that we can't handle. And it's this unstructured data. Well, Watson is breaking down that data and able to incorporate it into its speed that we're doing, right? So it makes it something that normally we have an analyst going ahead, reading, understanding, comprehending, and putting it in some kind of format that everyone else can use. Well, now we've got a machine, right? So that goes back to how we process that data so it's cheaper and easier and faster to use. So you can see here also as part of Watson, it's actually going on the scaling web all the time. So we get 5 to 10 updates on our structured things and our feeds hourly, 100,000 updates a week. I mean, I know our brain processes that, but can you actually think about quantifying 100,000 things that you've looked at in a week? I mean, I'm sure this room, if we put it together, would be kind of difficult, right? Aaron. So Watson, of course, from our perspective, is one of those great ways to help speed up that processing of data. So getting smarter with AI. So how do we use that automation? We talked about Watson. Let's talk about automating processes as far as scanning code when we're doing development, right? Understanding, getting new data about the people that are involved in your organization, right? So it may be, if we're talking about internally, like a background check, talk about customers, talk about business person, it doesn't matter. Having a method to go out and find that when we need it for checks from that perspective, and on the other side, tagging it and understanding it internally in our data so we can protect it, right? Qualifying the identities of people who's accessing the data, right? If we can give data points as to what makes a fraudulent identity and someone connecting and things like that, we can quickly have the system help protect us dynamically as it's happening. Not that I'm getting an alert and something's happening and I go, yep, that's that guy. Let's tell the computers when it's coming in from our logs from our systems, or whatever it is, as we're seeing that, let's say that's the bad guy. And let's understand who may be a bad guy also. Let's find factors that point out and say, hey, you know what? This person's doing something they shouldn't be doing. They're trying to access a system that they shouldn't be accessing. Things like that, right? And predicting threats, of course. How do we get ahead of it? If we can find the threat and the vulnerability, the problem before it actually costs us money, or costs us lives, or costs us whatever the cost is, obviously we want that, right? So orchestration. Again, taking all the things that the data that we have and making it worthwhile. So we just got a couple things here. I'll just pick one or two. Looking up the systems from the asset, right? Looking in one of our, getting data from one of our endpoint systems, right? Doing LDAP lookups. There are things that in the past phone calls would be happening. Some places phone calls still are happening. Hey man, should I be touching that system? No. Make that happen automatically. Let's figure out how to get, I mentioned 80%. Let's figure out how to get rid of that 80% that we're working on so we can focus on high value tools, focus on high value projects, right? So, one thing that we found, we actually, IBM has a cyber range up in Cambridge right now. But one thing we found when we asked customers that had gone through it, there were a couple things. Security doesn't start in that small room. Security has to be a corporate thing or an organizational thing, right? Everyone needs to realize that, you know, it's the TSA. If you see something, say something, right? You need to understand what security means. You know, whether that is, hey, I really shouldn't have my Post-it under my keyboard, or, hey, you know what, so-and-so came through the door, I don't know who that is, let's not just let him walk through our organization, to, hey, you know, something looks funny here in this system, or whatever it is. Everyone needs to understand that security happens together. Playbooks cracks under pressure. This was a funny one. So we were talking about, well, what do you do when something bad happens, right? So I was actually talking about this with my boss, and we were talking about the pilot that landed the plane on the Hudson River. And we were talking about what that must have been like. And obviously from our perspective, we travel for a living, so that was a little bit scary. But the fact that this pilot, he had the wherewithal and the experience and the confidence to say, hey guys, this is what the problem is. He went through, my understanding is he went through like a 3-page checklist with his co-pilot to say, here's everything that we need to worry about, here's what we need to do. He talked with air traffic control, and it was very predictable, right? And it was mostly unemotional, as it can be, right? But the point was, he was able to take charge and with confidence, and it wasn't somebody up high that said, hey, this is what we're gonna do, right? It was someone who was close to the situation, who was able to quickly respond and be successful, right? But he had a playbook. He knew what was going on. Well, I found that when we were talking to our customers that were going through this exercise, a lot of them, we said, when was the last time you tried it out? Does this work? Is it tested? And they smiled and they gave us the thumbs up. I think people know that, right? That goes back to my comment about, are we securing for compliance, or are we securing for risk, right? Do we actually know what's going to happen? And the reality is, this playbook, it shouldn't just be the tech guys, right? I had the pleasure to go through and I became a media person. And the person up at the front started asking me questions from a media perspective on how I was supposed to respond. And one of the questions, as our small group of media people, our marketing guys were talking, he said, are you guys authorized to make that statement? And it was kind of like, well, we're marketing, but are you authorized to make that statement? I said, wow, that's crazy. I didn't have the rules, I didn't have the engagement structure to be successful. So we need to make sure our employees are, right? And we need to make sure that, kind of goes back to that culture counts. We need to make sure that the messaging that they have is clear and concise. And it's not corporate gobbledygook. It makes sense. It's easy for them to follow, right? I heard a story from the gentleman who runs our range where he was talking with a customer. It was a situation where they had no communications for the company. They were dark. So they were communicating on cell phones. So they had text blasts and they had calls. Well, the message that they sent out was something to the effect of protect the customer, protect the employees. I think it was be safe. I think that's what it was, right? And they said, do what you need to do, right? And just like with the pilot, there were a number of situations where if they had gotten back into this, hey, we're trying to figure out, everybody's going to come back and figure it out, never would have gotten through it. But because they were able to empower their employees, they had a clear message to their employees as far as what they needed to do to succeed, the employees were able to take the ball and run with it. They were able to get the company through the issue until they at least got to a point where, hey, now there's corporate communication again, right? And leadership matters. One thing that we found was executives in a situation where the ship is going down like this and something's bad, they're not the right people. There are too many things that they have to consider as just part of who they are, right? Think about it. An executive's worried about what's going to happen when they have to report to the board. They're worried about financials. They're worried about, you name it. There's all this stuff. They're worried about tomorrow. So there are a lot of times where there is so much analytics that happens in their just normal day business process in their minds. In a situation like this, you can't respond fast enough. So find out who it is that is the right person. Obviously, we found military people were much better based on their training, but there are other people, obviously, that can fit into that. But find out who that person is in the organization. Make sure that when you're testing and you're stepping up and you see that it happens. So stronger together, right? Just as I was mentioning, we need to push as customers, as vendors, as researchers, as the government, and academia, we all need to push each other to work together and to standardize and to share. Because in the end, that's the only way we're going to succeed from that perspective. So a little bit about IBM sharing. So here are two of the ways that we are sharing as part of our platform, right? So on the left, we see our IBM Security App Exchange. So what we've created is we've created a method for our partners, or even our customers if they choose, to build apps that run on our platform to help integrate, to help provide content, whatever it is, but to make it easier to do that sharing, to make it easier that on our platform, our customers, their customers, get what they need. Here we see a couple, we see a Palo Alto app, right? We see a StealthBit app. We see some of the IBM content here that we have used this infrastructure to push data out. Our user behavior analytics. You see obviously Snare. But from our perspective, by having this framework, it makes it easier for us to share, it makes it easier for our partners, our customers to share, to kind of build that last slide that I mentioned. And also creating a community, right? Our X-Force Exchange is, as you can see, it's real-time threat intelligence. So it's from our MSS organization, from our customers, watching threats actually happen. In real time on a slide, if I remember correctly, I saw this, and it, or at least it might have been an older, and it looked like lightsabers with the lights kind of making a sound, and I laughed because, I mean, it sounded like lightsaber sound for me. I was like a little kid there. But anyways, but not only do I get to see current threat activity through this, but I get to build my own community, right? I might say, hey, I'm a hospital. I just want to talk with some hospital customers and understand what they're going through or in the community. And I can choose how much I want to share with them. I can choose, as a group, we can choose how much our community shares, either together or with the rest of the world. We can, wall ourselves off. Education, we can pick a bunch of schools together and communicate this. And then it's through this community, we're also able to feed our tools, right? Where as we find, bad IPs, where we know that there's bad actors coming from those IPs, things like that, we're able to push that into our tools, automate the data we're getting, get it into the tools that we have, and use